Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The story you are about to hear is titled, The Nurse Who Signed a Marriage Contract to Save a Patient's Life. The night shift at Westbridge Private Hospital was silent, the kind of silence that hummed through fluorescent lights and distant monitors. Nurse Lila Gwynn checked the vitals of her only patient on the VIP floor, Adrian Hale, 33 years old, the youngest CO in the city, and for the last 3 months, a man trapped between life and death. Machines breathed for him. Reporters waited outside for any change. But inside this room, it was just Lila, the steady beep of a heart monitor, and a man who once commanded empires now lying motionless under white sheets. At 2 a.m., the door opened. A man in a dark suit stepped in quietly. He was not a doctor. His voice carried the weight of authority and exhaustion. "Miss Gwynn," he said, "I am Harris, legal counsel for the Hale Corporation. We need to speak about Mr. Hale's medical status." Lila straightened, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Is something wrong?" Harris hesitated. According to hospital policy, if there is no legal guardian to approve further interventions within 24 hours, the board will have to terminate life support. Her breath caught. Terminate? But his condition is improving. Harris lowered his voice. That may be, but without a legal spouse or family, we have no authority to continue. The board requires a signature. Someone who has a vested interest. He slid a document across the table, its gold-embossed seal gleaming under the pale light. Adrian Hale left an advance directive. If he ever became incapacitated, he wanted medical power of attorney given to the person he trusted most. He wrote your name. The words hit her harder than she expected. My name? That has to be a mistake. I am just his nurse. Harris looked at her steadily. You were the last person he spoke to before the accident. You stopped his bleeding on the roadside. He made the choice. Lila's voice trembled. What do you want me to do? Marry him, Harris said simply. The air froze between them. Legally, not romantically. It is the only way to secure his treatment authorization. Without a spouse, the insurance and trust will lapse by dawn. If you agree, this document will make you Mrs. Adrian Hale, at least on paper. Lila's pulse raced. The words sounded absurd, impossible, dangerous. But when she looked at the still man on the bed, she saw not a millionaire but a patient who had once thanked her for saving his life. How long would it last? She whispered. Until he recovers, Harris replied. Or until he does not. She closed her eyes. Images flashed her younger brother struggling to breathe at home, unpaid medical bills, the faces of patients she had lost when hospitals cut budgets. This was madness. Yet, something inside her whispered that walking away would haunt her forever. She took the pen. The click echoed in the sterile room. Her signature, small and trembling, sealed the line beside his name. Harris nodded solemnly. Congratulations, Mrs. Hale. You have just saved a man's life. As the lawyer left, Lila remained beside the bed. Her hand hovered over Adrian's. I hope someday you will understand why I did this, she murmured. Outside, the city slept, unaware that a nurse had just married a man who could not speak, to keep him alive for one more day. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the city still looked gray and heavy. Lila Gwynn walked through the hospital corridor with the same steady steps she had practiced for years, but inside her chest, her heart felt like a storm. Overnight, she had gone from a nurse with debts to pay, to the legal wife of a man who did not even know her name anymore. The hospital staff whispered as she passed. Words like gold digger and opportunist floated through the air. She pretended not to hear. At the nurse's station, a young intern smiled awkwardly. "Congratulations, Mrs. Hale," he said, half joking, half unsure. Lila forced a polite nod and went straight to the private suite. Adrian Hale still lay motionless, his dark hair against the white pillow, machines tracing his fragile life on glowing screens. She adjusted his blanket, checked the four, and spoke softly, as if he could hear her. "Well, Mr. Hale, I guess it is official now. You and I are married, at least on paper." Her voice cracked at the end. She sat for a moment, watching the rise and fall of his chest. "Do you know you saved me once?" "You do not remember, but I do." Months earlier, she had been a second-year nurse on a scholarship funded by the Hale Foundation. He had visited the clinic, thanked every staff member by name. He had even stopped to pick up a fallen photo of her and her younger brother. That small kindness had stayed with her ever since. Now she was here, fighting to give him the same chance. The door opened quietly. Harris stepped in, holding a folder. Mrs. Hale," he corrected himself, "thank you for what you did. The board has approved continued treatment. But there are conditions." He handed her a document. It listed rules: no public statements, no financial claims, and mandatory appearances at press events to keep the company image stable. "Press events," she repeated, startled. "You will represent his household," Harris said. "The public must believe Adrian Hale's private life is under control. Investors panic easily." Lila shook her head. "You want me to play the perfect wife for a man in a coma?" "Just until he recovers," Harris said. "The company needs stability, and you are now legally Mrs. Hale. The hospital's PR team will help you prepare." When he left, she sat on the edge of the chair, the document trembling in her hands. The word "wife" looked unreal printed beside her name. That evening, she found herself in front of a mirror, wearing a navy blue suit provided by the corporate team. Makeup softened the dark circles under her eyes. A press assistant rehearsed answers with her. "Smile, but keep it modest. Say your husband is stable and you are grateful for the support." Lila nodded, numb. Cameras flashed as she stood behind the podium in the hospital lobby. "Mrs. Hale, how do you feel about your husband's condition?" a reporter shouted. Lila took a breath. "Adrian is strong. He is fighting, and I believe he will come back to us." Her voice wavered, but the sincerity in it made the crowd quiet for a moment. When she walked back to the suite, her hand still shook. She pressed her palm to the glass door, watching him through it. "You see, I am doing my best to protect your name," she whispered, "but I never asked for any of this." The monitor beeped softly, steady and calm. It was almost as if he was answering her. Late that night, she sat by his bedside, her head resting on her arms. Outside, thunder rolled again in the distance, and somewhere deep in her heart, Lila felt a strange pull and unspoken connection to the man whose life now depended on hers. She closed her eyes, unaware that behind her, Adrian's hand twitched ever so slightly, the faintest sign of life returning. 3 days passed, and the world outside moved on as if nothing had changed. But inside the glass walls of the VIP suite, everything felt suspended between duty and something she could not name. Lila and Gwyn had followed every order the hospital board and the Hale Corporation gave her. She wore the wedding band they provided. She gave daily updates to the press. Yet each night, when the cameras were gone, she returned to the quiet reality where it was just her and the sound of machines keeping a stranger alive. On the 4th morning, Harris returned with another document. "This is the formal postnuptial contract," he said. "It defines boundaries and responsibilities until Mr. Hale regains consciousness." Lila skimmed the pages. Clauses, numbers, signatures. The last one stopped her breath. It read, "This marriage shall remain valid until both parties agree to terminate it." "Who wrote that line?" she asked. Harris hesitated. "Adrian himself. He added it by hand before the accident. Said he believed in keeping promises personal." The ink was faintly smudged, but the handwriting was unmistakably male, deliberate. For a moment, she imagined him alive, leaning over his desk, signing with quiet conviction. That night, she sat beside him again, the soft glow of monitors painting her face. "You added that line," she whispered. "Why? Did you know something would happen?" Of course, there was no answer, only the rhythmic beat of his heart. She turned on the small speaker near his bed, playing the same jazz playlist he used to like, the one she found saved in his phone. The music filled the room with a mellow calm, as if it could keep both of them from breaking. "I wonder if you can hear me," she murmured. "They say some patients can. If you can, just fight a little longer, okay?" Her eyes flickered to the contract again, to her name beside his, and she could not help the small, incredulous laugh that escaped. "Mrs. Hale. I still cannot believe that is real." Across town, in a conference room high above the city, the Hale Corporation executives argued over numbers and control. Nathan Hale, Adrian's younger half-brother, stood at the head of the table. "The company cannot remain paralyzed because my brother chose sentiment over logic," he said sharply. "We need to move forward." A woman from legal spoke quietly. "But Mrs. Hale has medical authority and power of signature until Mr. Hale awakens." Nathan's expression hardened. "Then we make sure she does not misuse it." Back in the hospital, Lila continued her silent routine: chart updates, sponge baths, gentle conversations with a man who could not answer. But something had changed. Late one evening, while she was cleaning his hand, she felt the faintest twitch of his fingers. She froze, her breath caught. "Adrian," she whispered, leaning closer. Nothing. Maybe it had been her imagination. Still, her heart pounded. She pressed the call button, and when Dr. Harris arrived, she explained what she had seen. The doctor checked reflexes, ran a light over Adrian's pupils. "It might be residual muscle movement," he said gently, "but it is a good sign. Keep doing what you are doing." When they left, Lila sat there, unable to tear her eyes away. She reached for his hand again. "If that was you," she said softly, "do it again." Silence. Only the hum of the machines and the faint rain tapping on the window. She smiled sadly. "All right, maybe I am imagining things. But I will take it as hope." For the first time in weeks, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, he could hear her. That night, before leaving the room, she turned back one last time. "Good night, Mr. Hale," she whispered. "Your wife will be here tomorrow." As she stepped into the hall, she missed the faintest movement of his fingers curling over the sheet, as if trying to hold on to her voice. The following week unfolded like a slow-motion dream. Rumors about the mysterious wife of the comatose CEO spread through the hospital and the business world alike. Reporters camped outside the front gates, and every time Lila Gwyn walked through the lobby, someone was ready to take her picture. She hated it, but she had made a promise to protect Adrian Hale until he could protect himself again. That promise kept her steady. On Thursday morning, Harris came by again with a different tone. "Mrs. Hale, there will be a shareholders event this weekend," he said. "The company wants you to attend as Adrian's spouse. It will help stabilize public trust." Lila blinked. "Attend? In front of investors?" He nodded. "Just a brief appearance. Smile, shake hands, and say he is improving. We will handle the rest." Her stomach turned. She had never been to a corporate gala in her life, let alone as someone's wife. That night, she stared at her reflection in the mirror of the hospital staff lounge. Her uniform hung loosely on her shoulders, the color drained from her face. A stylist sent by the company arrived with a garment bag and a polite smile. "You will look perfect," the woman said, laying out an elegant navy dress. "Just remember, confidence photographs well." Lila's hands trembled as she zipped up the dress later that evening. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman looking back seemed older, composed, like someone who belonged in Adrian Hale's world. But deep down, she was still the same nurse who struggled to pay her brother's medical bills. At the event, the lights were blinding, the hall filled with murmurs and clinking glasses. Cameras flashed the moment she entered. Harris guided her to the front. "Stay calm," he whispered. "You just need to make a short speech." Lila's mind raced, but when she reached the podium and faced the crowd, a strange stillness came over her. "Good evening," she began softly. "My husband, Adrian Hale, cannot be here tonight, but he would want me to thank you for standing by him. He is a fighter. And I believe that strength never truly sleeps." Her voice was calm, sincere. The room, once full of noise, fell silent for a heartbeat before applause broke out. Somewhere in that moment, for the first time, she stopped feeling like she was lying. She was protecting someone she believed in. After the event, Harris approached her, clearly surprised. "That was perfect," he said. "You did better than anyone expected." "I was just honest," she replied quietly. Back in the hospital that night, she changed out of the gown and returned to Adrian's suite. His face looked peaceful under the dim lights. "Well, Mr. Hale," she said, sitting beside him, "your wife survived her first gala. I hope you are proud of me." She reached for his hand out of habit, and then froze. His fingers twitched again, stronger this time. The heart monitor beeped faster. Her breath caught. "Adrian? Can you hear me?" For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then his eyelids fluttered. Just a flicker, barely there. But it was enough to send her heart pounding. She pressed the emergency call button. Nurses and doctors rushed in, checking his vitals, shouting numbers. Lila stepped back, tears filling her eyes. Dr. Harris turned to her, astonished. "He is responding to stimuli," he said. "Mrs. Hale, this is extraordinary." Lila could barely speak. "He heard me," she whispered. "He really heard me." Later, when everyone left and the room was quiet again, she sat back down beside him. "You are coming back, Adrian," she said softly. "I knew you would." The monitor beeped steadily, strong and rhythmic. Outside, the rain began to fall again, but this time it felt like a promise instead of a burden. And as she watched over him, a realization bloomed quietly inside her heart: she was no longer just a caretaker. She was part of his life now, in ways neither of them could undo. When Adrian Hale opened his eyes for the first time, it was not like the movies. There was no dramatic music, no sudden clarity. Just light, confusion, and a dull ache that ran through every bone in his body. His vision blurred before settling on a familiar face: Lila Gwyn, sitting at his bedside, eyes wide and wet with disbelief. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice trembling, "you are awake." His lips parted, dry and heavy. Where am I?" he managed. "Westbridge Hospital," she said softly, gripping his hand. "You have been here for months. You were in an accident, but you are safe now." Adrian looked around, trying to make sense of the machines, the 4 lines, and the soft glow of the room. His gaze fell on her ring, simple in gold, glinting under the light. "You are my nurse?" Lila hesitated. "Yes. And also your wife." The words hung in the air between them. His brows furrowed, confusion flashing across his face. "My what?" She took a deep breath. "You named me as your legal guardian in your medical directive. The company needed a spouse to keep your treatment going. It was the only way to save your life. It was a legal marriage. Nothing more." Adrian stared at her for a long moment, then looked down at his hand, the ring on his finger matching hers. "I see," he said finally, his voice quiet but not cold. "Then I suppose I owe you my life." "You do not owe me anything," she said quickly. "I just did what was right." Over the next few days, recovery became routine. Physical therapists came and went, adjusting machines, guiding him through small exercises. His strength returned slowly, but his memory was fractured, like a shattered mirror. Some pieces fit together: his company, his brother Nathan, his penthouse overlooking the river, but others were missing. He remembered little of the crash, or why he had written Lila's name in that directive. Yet every time she walked into the room, something inside him stirred. It was not recognition, but a quiet familiarity that he could not explain. One afternoon, while she changed his bag, he studied her closely. "You said it was just legal," he murmured. "But you still wear the ring." She froze for a second, then smiled faintly. "It reminds me why I am here." "And why are you here, Mrs. Hale?" he asked, his voice low. Her eyes met his. "Because you needed someone to believe in you when no one else would." He said nothing, but the corner of his mouth lifted, almost imperceptibly. Later that week, the hospital organized a small press briefing. Harris insisted Adrian make a brief appearance to reassure investors. Lila tried to talk him out of it, worried it was too soon. "I can stand," he said stubbornly, gripping the bed rail. "If I can stand, I can lead." Cameras flashed as he was wheeled into the atrium, pale but alert. Lila stood behind him, heart pounding. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Hale, how does it feel to wake up and find out you are married?" The question made the room buzz. Adrian turned his head toward Lila, their eyes meeting for a fraction of a second. Then he looked back at the reporters. "It feels like life gave me a second chance," he said calmly. "And I intend to honor it." The crowd erupted in applause, the flashes like starlight. Afterward, in the elevator, Lila whispered, "You did not have to say that." "I meant it," he replied, his gaze fixed on her reflection in the mirror. "I may not remember everything, but I know this: when I opened my eyes, you were there." The elevator doors opened, and he wheeled himself out, leaving her breathless and unsure if what she felt was gratitude or something far deeper. That night, as she left the hospital, she glanced back through the glass wall of his room. Adrian sat upright, eyes half closed, listening to the same jazz she used to play for him. And for the first time, she wondered if their pretend marriage had just crossed an invisible line into something real. Weeks passed, and the hospital became a place of slow miracles. Adrian Hale was walking again with help from the therapists, his body regaining the strength his mind had nearly forgotten. Every morning, Lila Nguyen arrived early, always with the same calm smile, always carrying his chart and a thermos of coffee she never drank herself. To outsiders, they looked like a perfect couple, devoted wife and a recovering husband. But to them, every word carried an unspoken question. What would happen when the contract ended? One quiet evening, Adrian stood by the window overlooking the city's skyline. The last rays of sunset reflected off the glass towers, painting gold across his face. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" he asked softly. Lila looked up from folding his discharge papers. "Next? When I leave this hospital," he said. "Do we go back to being strangers?" She hesitated. "That is what the contract says." He turned to her, studying her expression. "And what do you say?" Her hands tightened around the papers. "I say it was never supposed to be real." Adrian smiled faintly. "Then why does it feel real?" She looked away, flustered. "You are imagining things." He stepped closer, slow and careful, his cane tapping against the polished floor. "Maybe," he said. "But when I was trapped in that darkness, I kept hearing your voice. You told me to fight. That is what brought me back." Her heart caught in her throat. "Adrian, please," she whispered. "You are still recovering." "So are you," he replied gently. "You carry everyone's pain like it is your own." The room fell into a tender silence, broken only by the sound of the monitor beeping steadily beside the bed. Lila turned away, blinking back tears. "You should rest." "You keep saying that," he murmured. "Maybe you should try it too." The next day, Adrian requested to walk outside for the first time. Lila guided him through the hospital garden, the air crisp with the smell of rain and pine. He stopped beside a bench, lowering himself slowly. "Do you remember the first time we met?" he asked. Before the accident? She frowned. You were a donor at the clinic. You handed me my scholarship letter. He nodded. You cried, he said with a quiet smile. I did not know why that memory stayed with me until now. She smiled, embarrassed. I was just grateful. That gratitude saved my life, he said. Now I want to give something back. You already have, she replied. You survived. He shook his head. I want to do more. I want to start a medical fund for low-income students. In your name. Her eyes widened. Adrian, you do not have to do that. I want to, he insisted. It is the least I can do for the woman who became my reason to live. Lila tried to speak, but no words came. She turned away, pretending to adjust the wheelchair, hiding her trembling hands. That night, as Adrian rested, she reread the marriage contract. 6 months. That was all it allowed. And yet, every look, every word between them, had begun to defy every line of that document. She ran her fingers over his signature at the bottom, the one written before the accident. This marriage shall remain valid until both parties agree to terminate it. She whispered to herself, maybe neither of us will. The lights dimmed, the machines hummed softly, and somewhere in the quiet space between duty and love, she finally admitted to herself what her heart had known all along. This was no longer a contract. It was something she could no longer undo. The calm that had settled over the hospital did not last. As Adrian Hale's recovery became public, attention from the media and his company intensified. Headlines read, CEO miraculously awakes thanks to his wife. Some called it a love story. Others called it a scandal. And somewhere behind those headlines, a new problem began to brew. Nathan Hale, Adrian's half-brother, had been acting CEO during his coma. He had grown comfortable in the role, and Lila Nguyen's name on the company papers was a threat to that comfort. One morning, as Lila arrived with fresh medical files, Harris stopped her in the corridor. His usually calm face looked tense. Mrs. Hale, he said carefully, I think you should prepare yourself. Nathan is filing a motion with the board. He is questioning the legality of your marriage. Her heart sank. He cannot do that. The contract is legitimate. He is claiming manipulation, Harris said. He says you married Adrian for money. Lila's breath caught. That is not true. I know, Harris said. But the court of public opinion does not care about truth, only stories. Later that day, she entered Adrian's room, trying to smile, but he could see through it instantly. What is wrong? He asked. Nothing, she said quickly. Just company business. Lila, his voice was firm. Do not hide things from me. She sighed. Your brother is trying to invalidate our marriage. He says it was fraud. Adrian's expression hardened. He is crossing a line. Do not get involved, she said. You are still healing. He is not just attacking you, Adrian said. He is attacking me. And I will not let that stand. That night, while the city slept, the story broke online. Photos of Lila in her nurse's uniform next to Adrian's hospital bed. Headlines questioning her motives. Comment sections filled with cruel words. She turned off her phone, tears burning her eyes. When she looked up, Adrian was awake, watching her from the bed. Do not read it, he said quietly. They do not know you. It still hurts, she whispered. After everything, they still think I did this for money. Then let me show them who you really are, he said. Let me tell the truth. What truth? She asked softly. Adrian's gaze was steady. That you saved my life twice. Once with your hands, and once with your heart. She tried to smile but could not. The world will never believe that. Then we will make them believe, he replied. The next morning, he asked Harris to arrange a board meeting. His strength was not fully back, but his will was. As Lila wheeled him into the boardroom, Nathan sat at the head of the table, confident and smug. "Well, look who finally decided to join us," Nathan said coldly. "I see your nurse still likes to play wife." Lila stiffened, but Adrian raised a hand. "Careful," he said. "That nurse has done more for this company than you ever have." Nathan laughed, dismissive. "We will see what the board thinks about that." Lila's pulse quickened. The air in the room felt heavy. She glanced at Adrian, who gave her a look that said only one thing: "Trust me." For the first time since their marriage began, she did. The boardroom was silent except for the faint hum of the city outside the tall glass windows. Adrian Hale sat at the far end of the table, pale but composed, his cane resting beside his chair. Nathan Hale smirked, leaning back with false confidence. "Brother, you cannot expect anyone to take this farce seriously," Nathan said. "You were unconscious. She saw an opportunity and took it. We both know that." Adrian's voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "You are wrong. Lila never asked for anything. She did not take advantage. She risked everything to keep me alive while you were busy signing off my company piece by piece." Murmurs rippled across the table. Nathan's jaw tightened. "You cannot prove that." Adrian opened the folder in front of him. "Actually, I can." He slid a printed report across the table. "These are the financial transfers you approved during my coma. Shell accounts in offshore banks. Funds moved from Hale Corporation subsidiaries. I have the audit trail." Nathan's face drained of color. "You do not know what you are talking about." Adrian continued. "It seems the only person who tried to exploit this situation was you." Lila watched the scene unfold, her heart pounding. Harris stepped forward, placing another file beside Adrian. "We also have a written statement from the legal department confirming the legitimacy of Mr. and Mrs. Hale's marriage, witnessed and notarized under hospital protocol." Everything was by the book. Nathan's composure cracked. "This is absurd," he shouted. Adrian leaned forward, his eyes cold. "The only absurd thing is that I ever trusted you." The board members exchanged looks, whispering. Harris cleared his throat. "The evidence speaks for itself. Effective immediately, the board will review Nathan Hale's position within the company." Nathan pushed back his chair violently. "You will regret this," he snapped, storming out of the room. The door slammed, leaving only silence behind. For a moment, no one spoke. Then one of the senior directors stood up. "Mr. Hale, Mrs. Hale," he said respectfully, "on behalf of the board, we are relieved to have you back." The room erupted into polite applause. Lila sat frozen, barely processing what had just happened. Adrian turned to her, his expression softening. "You do not have to look so shocked," he said quietly. "I told you I would protect you." Tears welled in her eyes. "You did not have to risk your position for me." "It was never a risk," he said. "It was the truth." Later that evening, the city lights shimmered like scattered stars across the hospital windows. Lila stood in the hallway, staring out at the skyline. Everything had changed. Her name had been cleared, the truth revealed. Yet her heart was heavier than before. Adrian walked up behind her, moving slower than usual but steady. "We won," he said softly. "You won," she corrected. "I was just there." He shook his head. "You were the reason I fought. You were the reason I came back." She turned to face him. "The contract still stands," she reminded him. "It ends in 2 weeks. Then we will talk in 2 weeks, he said with a faint smile. "And maybe this time, I will be the one asking for your signature." Her lips parted in surprise, but he was already walking away, the echo of his cane fading down the corridor, leaving her breathless and unsure if he had just made a promise or a proposal. 2 weeks later, the rain had returned to Westbridge, washing the city in silver light. The hospital was quiet now, Adrian Hale discharged and fully recovered. Lila Nguyen stood in the empty suite, her hand brushing over the bed rail one last time. Everything in that room carried a memory: the faint smell of antiseptic, the soft hum of machines, and the ghost of a heartbeat that once filled the silence. On the table sat the marriage contract, neatly folded. It was time to end what had begun as an act of mercy. Harris had called that morning, reminding her that the 6-month clause expired tonight. She nodded and said she would bring the papers herself. Now, standing there, she wondered why her chest hurt so much. She had always known this moment would come. She slipped off the simple gold ring and placed it on top of the document. "Goodbye, Mr. Hale," she whispered. It was never supposed to be real. A soft knock came at the door. She turned and froze. Adrian stood there, no longer in hospital clothes but in a dark tailored suit, healthy, composed, and smiling in a way she had never seen before. "You really were going to end it without me?" he asked gently. "It was just a contract," she said, trying to sound calm. "It served its purpose." "Did it?" he asked, stepping closer. "Because for me, it became everything." She shook her head, eyes filling with tears. "Adrian, please. You do not have to say that. You do not owe me anything." "You are right," he said softly. "I do not owe you. I love you." The words hung in the air, steady and sure. She stared at him, speechless. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. "I found this in your old locker. It was your resignation letter." She blinked, confused. "How did you wrote it weeks ago," he said. "But you never sent it. Maybe because some part of you did not really want to leave." He set the letter aside and pulled out a new document, this one smaller, handwritten. "What is that?" she asked. He smiled. "A new contract. 2 clauses only." He read it aloud. Clause 1: no more pretending. Clause 2: no expiration date. A tear slipped down her cheek as she let out a shaky laugh. "You and your contracts," she whispered. "I guess I will have to read the fine print this time." He took her hand, placing the new paper over the old one. "This time, the fine print just says I love you." For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain tapped softly against the windows, and the city lights shimmered below like 1,000 beating hearts. Finally, she nodded. "Then I guess we have a deal, Mr. Hale." He smiled, the kind of smile that could light an entire room. "Please," he said, reaching for her hand. "Call me Adrian." She laughed through her tears. "All right, Adrian." He slipped the ring back onto her finger, its gold warm against her skin. Outside, the rain eased, and somewhere beyond the clouds, the first light of dawn began to break. In that quiet room where a contract had once saved a life, 2 hearts had finally signed something far greater forever.